While most people were celebrating Christmas, roughly $782 million left the Bitcoin ETFs in a single week, and yet, when you look at the price during that same period, almost nothing happened. Welcome back to Black Room Trade. In this playlist, we're not going to talk about price prediction. We focus on the market environment and we read conditions instead of chasing signals. So let's slow this down for a moment. A large amount of Bitcoin was sold through ETF, but price barely reacted. And that combination matters a lot because it tells us one thing very clearly. Someone was buying and we just don't know who that is. This is the January setup. When liquidity comes back in early January, we're going to find out whether those buyers stay active or quietly step away. And to understand why that matters, we need to talk about the ETF flows. ETF flows are useful because they show us how a large amount of money are moving, not based on opinions or headlines, but through real transactions. So when money leaves Bitcoin ETF in a single week, the first assumption is usually simple. As the year comes to an end, many funds adjust their positions. They reduce exposure, close positions that no longer fits their strategy, and move cash in preparation for the next year. This kind of activity is pretty common at the end of the year, even though it doesn't really happen the same way every time. But when you place those flows next to the price action, something doesn't quite add up. Despite heavy selling, Bitcoin stayed in the mid-high 80s. And that's a lot of selling with very little price reactions. And that's not something you usually see by accident. Now let's add another layer. Take a look at this piece. If you look at the open interest, you can see that leverage was flushed. So open interest represents the total value of leverage positions in the market. And in late December, that number fell by roughly $3 billion. So a lot of people see this and feel relieved because lower leverage usually means fewer forced liquidations and fewer rapid chain reaction. So the assumption becomes that the dump might be over and the market might be on more stable footing. Personally, I'm more careful with that kind of conclusions because even though leverage is lower, liquidity right now is still very thin, especially during the holidays. It doesn't take much volume to keep price stable, and small flows can have much bigger impact than usual. So historically, price action during these low liquidity period often looks very different once normal trading returns. If you take a step back and look at the environment as a whole, volatility is low, leverage is lower, and price is steady. But all of this is happening while many trading desks are closed and overall participation is really reduced. So I believe January is when everything is going to change. Now there's also part of this picture that we can't clearly see. We know those outflow left ETFs. And that money didn't just disappear, right? Someone was on the other side of those traders, and large players tend to buy slowly, very often through private channels and over a long period of time, which makes them hard to spot in real time. And that uncertainty matters because when liquidity comes back in January, we're going to find out whether those buyers are still there or whether they step away. Now, look at the trading volume. This is the quietest trading period of the year. In an environment like this, price can stay flat simply because there aren't enough traders to move it. And when normal volumes return, price is going to start reflecting the real convictions. And that's why January matters so much. At this point, most people ask the same questions, which is it going up or is it going down? What matters is what happened next once liquidity returns. So if ETF outflow slows down or stop in early January, price has room to move higher. Selling pressure would already be absorbed, and if buyer stays active, price can move up. But if ETF outflows continue into January, then the picture changes because the buyer who absorbed selling pressure in December may no longer be there. And when full participation returns, the selling pressure can show up in price very fast. So at this point, I think both outcomes are realistic. The differences comes down to whether selling continues or finally slows, and we won't know that until January data comes in. Now let's zoom out for a moment. The Federal Reserve has started cutting rates, and the dollar is having its weakest year since 2017. Gold just had its strongest year since 1979, up roughly 72%, and silver is up around 169%. I mean, the money is clearly moving towards assets that people see as more stable. While gold and silver are seeing strong inflows, Bitcoin is not doing exactly well. And right now, the market isn't really treating Bitcoin like a digital gold. It almost feels like it is treating it more like a risk assets. Now, there's still important things that we don't know. We don't know who absorbed the ETF sellings. We don't know whether they'll keep buying, and we don't know where strong support really is if price starts to move lower. Now, if you look at the on-chain volume profile, the 70 to 80,000 range is relatively thin, meaning not many people built their positions there earlier in the year. And when price move into thin areas like that, it can move faster than expected. But that doesn't mean that it will happen, but it does mean that the structure isn't very strong. Now let's take a look into Ethereum. ETH is actually doing pretty much the same thing as Bitcoin right now, which is struggling. And in ETH case, it's even worse. Ethereum is down about 13% this year, while Bitcoin is only down around 7%. But here's where things get very interesting. Even though the price is weak, ETH's network activity is stronger than ever. Staking just hit all-time high. Almost 30% of all ETH is now locked up in staking. That means people are committing their coins to secure the network and earn rewards. Then you look at layer 2s. These are the network built on top of ETH to make transactions faster and cheaper. And right now, about 92% of all ETH transactions are happening on layer 2 network. And don't forget, Ethereum is still dominating the DeFi spaces. Around 68% of all decentralized finance value is on Ethereum, and that's close to $69 billion. So when you put all of this together, you get a really strange picture, which is staking is at record high, layer 2 usage massive, and yet the price is down about 13% on the year. So the network is being used more than ever, but the price isn't reflecting it. We don't really know why this is happening, but this is definitely something that you have to keep an eye on. Now, last but not least, altcoins. Altcoins are doing what they usually do when Bitcoin and Ethereum are weak. They're getting hit harder. Now, I think XRP is a good example. Not throwing shades at the XRP army. Late December, XRP has fallen back to around $1.86, giving back most of those gains. And this pattern shows up again and again when the market is fragile. So the conclusion is that stories don't stick. Even positive news for individual coins struggles to hold when there isn't real appetite for risk. And that's why altcoins are useful to watch, because they act like a sentiment gauge. When altcoins rally and hold their gains, the market is confident. And when stories fade this quickly, it's telling you that the overall environment is still very, very defensive. Now, heading into January, these are two things that I'm watching closely. First would be the ETF flows. The second thing would be the large holders' behavior. Buying, it's going to suggest support it's building, while selling is going to be a warning. Now, that's pretty much the framework I have for today. If you found this useful, make sure you leave a comment or hit the like button. If you feel like I missed out on any specific topic, feel free to drop a comment. I'll definitely get into it, and I'll see you in the next video.